Darnell Jackson woke up before the sun every day, even on days when he barely got any sleep the night before. His old alarm clock didn't always ring on time, but Darnell had trained himself to wake up naturally. Lived in a cramped one-bedroom apartment at the edge of Atlanta, in a neighborhood where sirens were more common than birdsong. The paint on the walls was peeling, the plumbing creaked in the middle of the night, and the refrigerator made a noise like a dying engine butt. Darnell had learned not to complain. He had learned to survive. Each morning began the same. He would tiptoe around his mother's room, careful not to wake her. Miss Loretta Jackson had been sick for the past 2 years, ever since the stroke that left her unable to walk without help. She used to work 2 jobs and sing in the church choir every Sunday. Now she sat in a wheelchair, her smile still as bright, her voice softer, but always loving. Darnell made her oatmeal, added a little cinnamon, her favorite tanned. Left. It covered on the kitchen table with a sticky note that read, "Love you, Mama." He didn't have much, but he gave her everything he could. Darnell worked at a small private airport, not the big one that everyone knew. This one was used for private jets, charter planes, and sometimes even experimental aircraft. It didn't look like much from the outside, a few hangars, a short runway, and a tired office building with faded windows, but to Darnell, it was where he came alive. He had always loved airplanes. When he was a child, he would lie on the hood of an abandoned car near his apartment building and watch the planes fly overhead, imagining what it would feel like to be inside one, high above the clouds, far away. From broken sidewalks and unpaid bills, his job wasn't glamorous. He was a mechanic, not even a supervisor. Just a regular wrench-turning, grease-covered, underpaid aircraft mechanic. He worked under people who had fewer skills than he did, but more degrees. He never complained. He just worked harder. That morning, Darnell's old Honda refused to start. Again, the battery was weak, and the starter made a horrible clicking sound when he turned the key. He tried 3 times, then opened the hood and tapped the battery with a wrench, hoping it might help. He looked at the time. He was going to be late. He grabbed his tool bag and started jogging. The airport was 3 miles away. He had done it before, more times than he could count. As he ran, cars zoomed past him. Some drivers stared. 1 or 2 even laughed, but he didn't care. His shirt was already soaked with sweat by the time he reached the gates. When he arrived, the security guard gave him a look. "You're late, Jackson?" the man said. "I know." "Car trouble again," Darnell replied, catching his breath. "Boss ain't gonna like it. You've had too many late days this month." Darnell nodded silently and went straight to the hangar. His supervisor, a man named Keith, met him at the entrance. Keith was the kind of guy who liked the sound of his own voice. We wore clean shirts, even though he never touched tools. He looked Darnell up and down, noticed the sweat, and smirked. "You're on thin ice, Darnell," he said. "1 more late day, and that's it." Darnell didn't respond. He just walked past and started working. There was a small Cessna with a fuel line issue. Darnell got on his back, slid under the fuselage, and began checking connections. Hands moved like a pianist's, fast, smooth, and confident. He loved the work. It was the only time he didn't think about money or bills, or his mother's medical appointments. But that day, even the work didn't distract him. The eviction. Notice had come the night before, a red paper taped to his door. 3 months behind on rent. He had used the last of his savings to pay for his mother's medication. The landlord gave him 1 week to leave. All day, Darnell worked in silence, lost in thought. His coworkers chatted, took long breaks, and scrolled through their phones. Darnell didn't stop, not even to eat lunch. He didn't have money for lunch anyway. By the end of the shift, his stomach growled, but he didn't complain. He wiped the grease from his hands, cleaned his tools, and was getting ready to leave when a call came over the radio. Emergency on the runway. Jet landed with mechanical issues. Need a mechanic immediately. Keith looked around, then pointed at Darnell. You're still here. Take it." Darnell grabbed his kit and jogged toward the runway. As he got closer, he saw the jet. It was sleek, expensive looking, with the kind of paint job only rich people could afford. A few people stood near it, including airport staff and a woman, in a tailored suit with dark sunglasses and perfect posture. She didn't look happy. When Darnell approached, one of the ground crew whispered, "That's Lexi Moreau. Billionaire, tech lady, super rich, super tough." Darnell walked up quietly and asked, "What seems to be the issue?" The pilot pointed toward the engine and said, "She says it was vibrating midair. She doesn't want to take off until someone checks it. But we need to move it off the runway. It's blocking everything." Lexi looked at Darnell, clearly annoyed. "Can you fix it or not?" "I'll take a look," he replied. He climbed up to the engine compartment, opened it, and immediately saw that something wasn't right. The wiring to one of the sensors had come loose, and part of the casing had been damaged, probably by a bird strike. It wasn't catastrophic, but it could lead to bigger problems if ignored. Darnell reached into his kit. He didn't have the perfect tools, but he had skill. Years of experience taught him how to improvise. He adjusted the wiring, secured the housing, and reinforced it with a custom clip he fashioned from spare metal. It wasn't pretty, but it was solid and safe. All the while, Lexi watched him. She seemed impatient at first, but then her expression changed. She noticed the precision in his hands, the way he examined each part like it was a work of art. In just under an hour, it was done. He wiped his forehead, climbed down, and said, "Try it now." The pilot powered up the engine, hummed smoothly. No vibrations, no warnings. Lexi raised an eyebrow. "How did you fix that so fast?" she asked. Darnell shrugged. "Just experience." She stepped closer. "You don't talk much, do you? Not unless someone asks." "Well, I'm asking," she said. "What's your name?" "Darnell Jackson." "Thank you, Darnell Jackson. You've saved me a lot of trouble." He nodded and turned to leave. His clothes still stained with oil, his shoes worn out, his mind already drifting back to the eviction notice waiting at home. He didn't know it yet, but in that short moment covered in sweat, grease, and silence, his life had just changed. Lexi watched him walk away, her curiosity growing. There was something different about him, something honest, real. She had met engineers from MIT tech giants, from Silicon Valley. But she had never seen anyone fix a problem like that. With calm hands and no need for attention, Darnell didn't. Turned back, he didn't expect anything. For him it was just another day, another broken thing fixed, another moment of survival. But fate had finally started to notice him. And fate, like engines, has a way of moving fast when it finally takes off. The next day started like most days for Darnell Jackson, but this time something felt different. He still woke up before sunrise, still made breakfast for his mother, and still walked quietly to avoid waking her too early. The oatmeal was warm. The note was on the table, and the air outside was still heavy with early morning silence. But something inside him felt like a quiet hum, like the buzz of a machine warming up. His car, as usual, didn't start. He didn't even try this time. He just picked up his tools, slung his bag over his shoulder, and began walking. The streets were empty. His mind wasn't. He kept thinking about the jet from the day before. The woman, Morrow, still echoed in his mind. She was sharp, powerful, and looked like someone who lived in a different universe. And yet, for a few moments, their worlds had touched right there on the hot tarmac. She had spoken to him with real interest, even if just for a few minutes. At the hangar, things were just as they always were. Grease on the floor, loud tools buzzing, and Keith barking orders like he owned the place. No one mentioned the emergency jet from the day before. No one said good job or well done. Darnell didn't expect it. He went to work head down, focused. Then, just before lunch, the office phone rang. One of the receptionists answered it and looked confused. She called Keith, who looked irritated. After a few minutes, Keith called out across the hangar, "Jackson." Darnell looked up. "You're needed on the runway. Same jet as yesterday. Go now." Darnell grabbed his tool bag and started walking fast. This time he didn't run. His heart was already beating faster than his feet. When he reached the runway, he saw it again, Lexi's jet, sleek, shiny, and waiting. But something was different this time. Was no emergency, no one panicking. The jet was parked to the side, not blocking anything. Lexi stood next to it, arms crossed, wearing sunglasses again. She looked straight at him as he approached. "You again?" she said with a small smile. Darnell nodded. "What's the issue this time?" "No issue," she said. "I asked for you." That confused him. "Ma'am, I asked for you." "Wanted to talk to the guy who fixed my jet faster than my own engineers back in New York? I figured I owed you at least that much." Darnell looked around, unsure of what to say. He wasn't used to being spoken to like this, especially not by someone famous. Lexi pointed to a shaded area by the hangar wall. "Can we sit?" He followed her quietly. They sat on a bench, and for a moment neither of them spoke. The sound of distant engines and the worry of hangar tools filled the silence. "You're good at what you do," she said finally. "Thank you. Really good. You fixed something that could have taken hours, maybe days, in less than an hour. You didn't even flinch." "It's my job," Darnell replied, voice low. "Maybe, but most people panic under pressure." "You didn't," Darnell shifted uncomfortably. Compliments always made him nervous. He wasn't used to them. Lexi leaned back. "Where'd you learn to work like that?" Darnell paused. "Started with cars. Old ones. My uncle ran a shop back when I was a teenager. He taught me. Then I got into planes when I joined a technical program. I studied hard, worked even harder. No fancy degrees?" "No, ma'am, just hands-on." Lexi smiled again. "Like that." Darnell looked at her, still unsure where this was going. She glanced at her phone, then back at him. "I was supposed to be in Switzerland yesterday for a tech summit. I missed it. I don't mind now. That meeting can wait. Talking to you might be more important." "Why me?" he asked. "Because I've built companies from the ground up. I know talent when I see it, and people like you're rare. You've got skill.com, and something most engineers don't have anymore, humility." Darnell didn't know how to respond, so he stayed quiet. Lexi stood up. "I'm going to be around for a couple of days. I have some things to work out here in Atlanta, but I'd like to meet again. Are you okay with that?" Darnell nodded slowly. "Sure, I guess." "Good. I'll find you." She walked away toward her jet. Darnell stood there for a few minutes, confused but curious. What just happened? Back in the hangar, Keith gave him a suspicious look. What was that about? She just had questions. Darnell replied simply. Keith grunted, clearly not happy about being left out of the loop. But Darnell didn't care. For the first time in years, he felt like someone important had actually seen him. Over the next 2 days, Lexi did exactly what she said she would. She returned. Each time, she made up some excuse, checking the engine again, wanting a second opinion, or getting feedback on the fix. But each time it became clearer. She wasn't just there for the plane. She asked about his life, his mother, his dreams. She learned that he had once applied to an elite aviation school, but never got in because he couldn't afford the fees. She asked him what he would do if money wasn't a problem. "I'd build my own repair business," he said honestly. "One where I could help other young people learn, give kids like me a place to grow." She listened, really listened. She didn't interrupt or look bored. She wasn't checking her phone. She was focused on him. One afternoon, she brought him lunch. Real food grilled chicken, fresh salad, a cold drink, not a fast food bag. She handed it to him and said, "No one does good work on an empty stomach." He chuckled. "Thanks. I haven't had a meal like this in a while. You deserve." That day, they sat on the bench again, and the conversation turned deeper. "You know," Lexi said, "you remind me of someone." "Who?" "My father. He was a mechanic too. Could fix anything. Came from nothing. But he never gave up. He worked nights so I could study. I wouldn't be here if it weren't for him." Darnell nodded slowly. "Sounds like a good man." "Was? You have the same eyes, same look. Like you're carrying the world but still moving forward." They sat in silence for a few minutes. Something unspoken passed between them. Respect, recognition, connection. Then she stood up. "I'm leaving for New York tomorrow, but I want to make you an offer." "What kind of offer?" "I want you to come work with me, not as a basic. Mechanic. As a consultant, help my team design better engines, smarter systems. You've got ideas, Darnell. I can see it. Darnell blinked. I don't have a degree. I'm not trained for that level of work. You're trained by life, she said. That's more valuable than 100 papers. He hesitated. What about my mother? I'll cover her care. I have resources. You don't need to worry. He didn't know what to say. No one had ever offered him a way out before. And here was a billionaire standing in front of him, giving him a chance he never thought possible. I'll think about it, he said quietly. Do that, she replied. But no, this side, don't waste time on people who aren't worth it, and I've never offered anyone a job like this on the runway before. She turned and walked away. This time, Darnell watched her go, heart pounding. His life was no longer stuck. It was shifting, changing, opening. That night, he told his mother everything. She listened, holding his hand, her eyes full of pride. You've always been special, she whispered. It's about time the world noticed. And for the first time in a long time, Darnell believed it might be true. The next morning felt like a dream that hadn't ended yet. Darnell Jackson sat quietly on the edge of his bed, staring at the floor. He had barely slept the night before. His mother's soft breathing could be heard from her room. The sun hadn't even come up yet. Normally, he would have been thinking about his broken-down car, the unpaid bills, or the warning from his landlord. But today his mind was filled with something else, something he still couldn't fully believe. Lexi Moreau, one of the most powerful tech billionaires in the world, had offered him a job. Not just any job. A role as a consultant on her personal aviation design team. No college degree needed, no fancy resume. She wanted him just as he was. A struggling aircraft mechanic with calloused hands, old shoes, and grease under his nails. Why? Because she saw something in him that no one else ever had, and now he had a choice to make. The entire day passed in a blur. Darnell went to work like usual, but he wasn't really there. His body moved, his hands worked, but his mind kept replaying Lexi's words. You've got ideas, Darnell. Gan. See it. It almost didn't feel real. Why would someone like her take an interest in someone like him? But deep down, a small part of him whispered that maybe, just maybe, this was real. Maybe he was good enough. At the end of his shift, instead of walking home as usual, he took a different path. He went to the small park near the airport, the one with the old benches and cracked pavement. He sat down and pulled out a notebook he'd been carrying for years. The pages were full of sketches. Ideas, designs for engine parts, safety features, even a fuel efficiency model he had worked on during his free time. No one had ever seen it. He had never shown it to anyone because he didn't think it mattered. But now it might. That evening, he sat with his mother and told her more about Lexi's offer. She listened, smiling, her eyes bright with hope. You always dreamed of building planes, she said. Maybe this is how you start. But it's such a big step, he replied. What if I fail? You've already been failing by staying in a place that doesn't see your value. This is different. This is faith. The next day, Darnell gave his answer. He called the number Lexi had left with him. A professional-sounding assistant answered. Darnell introduced himself, and within seconds, Lexi was on the line. Darnell, she said warmly. I was hoping you'd call. I'm ready, he said simply. Let's do it. Her voice lit up. Good. Pack a bag. A car will pick you up tomorrow morning.
Oh, we're going to New York?
Darnell stared at the phone for a few seconds after she hung up. Was this really happening? The next morning, a black SUV pulled up outside his apartment. The driver stepped out, greeted Darnell politely, and helped load his single, old suitcase into the back. Darnell hugged his mother before leaving. She gave him a kiss on the cheek and whispered, Go show them who you are. The ride to the airport was smooth, but when Darnell saw the jet waiting for him, he stopped in his tracks. It wasn't just a private jet. It was the private jet Lexi's jet. It's the one he had fixed, the one that had started it all. This time, it gleamed even brighter in the morning sun. Lexi was already on board. She greeted him like an old friend. "Welcome to the skies," she said with a grin. The inside of the jet was like nothing Darnell had ever seen. Smooth leather seats, polished wood panels, screens built into the walls, and quiet engines that made it feel more like a floating living room than a plane. As they took off, Lexi began explaining what the next few weeks would look like. "I want you to meet my engineering team. These people are smart, but most of them have never worked. With their hands, they live in theory. You live in reality. That's the balance I want." Darnell nodded, still trying to take it all in. Everything was happening so fast when they landed in New York. Another car took them straight to Lexi's headquarters, a tall, shiny building in the heart of the city. The inside looked like a science lab mixed with a spaceship. People moved around quickly, screens flashed with numbers and designs, and the air buzzed with quiet energy. Lexi introduced Darnell to her lead engineers, who all looked surprised when they met him. Some raised eyebrows, some looked him up and down, clearly wondering who this quiet man in worn clothes was. But Lexi didn't let them question it. "Darnell's here to help. Listen to him." First it wasn't easy. Darnell felt out of place. The team used big technical words and discussed complex equations. But when he looked at the designs on the screens, he understood them deeply. Not through textbooks, but through experience. And when he started giving suggestions, the room slowly changed. He pointed out a flaw in the cooling system of their new prototype. The engineers didn't believe him at first. But when they tested it, they realized he was right. Then he suggested a new type of bolt placement to make the engine more stable under pressure. Again, it worked. Word spread through the building Lexi's Runway mechanic was the real deal. Over the next few days, Darnell's confidence grew. He spoke more, shared more. The team began to respect him, not because of where he came from, but because of what he knew. Lexi watched everything, quietly, proudly. One evening, after a long day, she invited Darnell to dinner. They went to a small rooftop restaurant that overlooked the city. As they sat down, she asked, "So how does it feel?" He looked out over the skyline and smiled, like I've stepped into someone else's life. "No," she said. "You've finally stepped into your life." They talked for hours that night, about dreams, about the past, about what it meant to come from nothing and still keep going. Lexi shared her struggles, too, how people had doubted her, how she had failed more than once, how she built everything she had from the ground up. "We're not that different, you and I," she said quietly. Darnell didn't say anything, but he felt it too. As the weeks passed, Darnell became a central part of the project. He worked long hours, stayed late, and never stopped learning. He began sketching new ideas, engine parts, designs, even fuel-saving concepts. Lexi gave him full freedom. One day, she brought him into a private design room and said, "This is yours now. Make something." It was a dream come true. But it wasn't just the work that changed. The bond between Darnell and Lexi grew stronger. There were moments when their hands touched briefly during conversations. Moments when they laughed too long at each other's jokes. Moments of silence that felt heavy, but not uncomfortable. Rainy night, while working late in the design lab, Lexi walked in holding 2 cups of coffee. She sat next to him and asked, "Do you ever think about where this all started?" "All the time," he said. "I was so angry that day. My meeting, my schedule, none of it went right. And then you showed up. Quiet, confident. You fixed what? I thought it couldn't be fixed. You gave me a chance. You earned it." They looked at each other, and something passed between them again. Not just respect, not just friendship. Something deeper. Neither of them spoke it out loud. Not yet. But they both felt it. Darnell went to bed that night with a strange, warm feeling in his chest. One morning, weeks later, Lexi called an emergency meeting. Everyone gathered in the main hall. On the big screen behind her was a new logo, a new project name. She announced a new line of sustainable aircraft engines that would change the way people thought about flight. And at the center of the design, Darnell's prototype. She turned to him in front of everyone and said, "This man made it possible. He's not just a mechanic, he's a visionary." The room clapped. Darnell stood there, stunned. He had never been clapped for before, never been seen like this. Later, when the room cleared out, Lexi walked up to him and said softly, "That was your miracle fix, and this is just the beginning." But neither of them knew in that moment that the biggest miracle was still to come. The morning sunlight poured into the glass walls of Lexi Morrow's aviation lab as the city of New York buzzed far below. Inside the building, people walked briskly through the hallways, holding tablets, blueprints, and coffee mugs. It had been 3 months since Darnell Jackson first stepped into this world, and yet every day still felt like a dream to him. He never forgot where he came from, still called his mother every night. He still carried the same old notebook in his backpack. But now, things were different. People saw him as more than just a mechanic. They saw him as a mind, a force, a leader. Lexi had given him a private lab. It wasn't huge, but it was his. He decorated it with small things from home framed. Photo of his mother, his uncle's old wrench, and one of his first sketches of a jet engine. This was where he worked on his ideas, improving systems, solving problems, making the impossible feel possible. The prototype he helped design had caught the attention of global engineers. Now investors were watching, reporters were asking questions. Everyone wanted to know who this quiet genius was, but while the world was beginning to see Darnell as a rising star, he remained the same, still humble, still calm, still focused. He always said the same thing when people praised him. "I'm just doing what I've always done." Only now someone finally noticed. Lexi noticed everything. She watched Darnell more closely now. Not just as a colleague, but as someone she had grown to care about. There was something about his presence that calmed her, grounded her. She had built her empire surrounded by powerful men in suits and loud voices. But Darnell was different. He didn't try to impress. He didn't demand attention, yet everyone respected him, especially her. Their friendship had grown stronger every week. They had dinner often, sometimes in expensive restaurants, sometimes just pizza boxes in the lab. They laughed, shared stories, sometimes even shared silence. And in that silence, feelings began to grow. Lexi had never planned for love. She always thought relationships would slow her down. She had worked too hard to reach the top, and she didn't trust people easily. But with Darnell, things felt natural. There was no pressure, no games. Just honesty, trust, kindness one evening. After a long day of meetings and design reviews, she found Darnell asleep in the lab, his head resting on a pile of papers. She stood there quietly watching him. He looked peaceful, like a man who had finally found his place in the world. She didn't wake him. She just covered him with a blanket and smiled to herself. The next morning, Darnell woke up confused, saw the blanket, and smiled. He knew it was her. Soon after, Lexi invited Darnell to her estate on the edge of the city. It was a quiet place, full of green trees, gardens, and space. She told him she went there when she needed to think. They walked together through the garden. Paths, talking about the past. "You know," she said, "when I was a kid, I used to sit in the grass and look up at the sky, just like you did." Darnell nodded. "And now you own jets that fly across that sky. You helped me fix one," she added with a grin. He laughed. That was the moment everything changed. For both of us, there was a pause. The breeze moved through the trees, and Lexi looked at him seriously. "Have you ever thought about the future, Darnell?" "I think about it all the time." "Mean, what do you want?" "Really want?" He thought for a moment, then answered, "I want a place where kids like me can learn. I want to build engines that use less fuel, make less noise, harm the planet less. I want to take care of my mom. She gave up everything for me." Lexi smiled. "That's a good future. And you?" he asked. She looked up at the sky. "I want something I've never had, peace. And maybe someone to share it with." Their eyes met, and for a moment, they both felt it. Quiet connection that had been growing between them was now impossible to ignore. Later that week, Lexi surprised Darnell again. She called a private meeting with her legal team, investors, and engineers. When everyone was in the room, she made an announcement. "We're launching a new division," she said. "A branch dedicated to smart aviation for the future. I want Darnell Jackson to be the co-founder." The room went silent. Darnell stood frozen. "I'm not asking," Lexi said with a smile. "I'm telling you, you've earned it." People clapped. Some were shocked. Others were genuinely happy. And Darnell, he was speechless. He had never been called a founder before. He'd never imagined he'd be offered ownership of anything, let alone part of a billion-dollar company. After the meeting, he pulled Lexi aside. "Are you sure?" he asked. "I've never been more sure," she replied. "You're not just part of this journey, Darnell. You're leading it." He looked into her eyes and nodded. "Then let's build something that matters." From that day, they worked even closer together. Side by side, dreaming, planning, designing. Lexi introduced Darnell to world leaders, tech visionaries, and top investors. At every introduction, she proudly said, "This is Darnell Jackson, co-founder and lead engineer." He never got used to hearing it, but he grew into it. Their bond, once quiet and slow, began to deepen faster now. They stayed late in meetings just to spend more time together. They shared stories from their past that they hadn't told anyone else. One night, during a rainstorm, Lexi stood at the window watching the city lights and said softly, "I never thought I'd fall for someone like you." Darnell looked up from his work. "What do you mean? You're nothing like the world I came from. You're real." He walked over to her, took her hand, and said, "You're real too. People just forget to look beneath the surface." She looked into his eyes, and in that moment, everything changed. They kissed for the first time. It wasn't planned. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, like everything between them. But it was full of emotion, trust, respect, and the feeling that they had found something rare. After that, they were no longer just business partners or friends. They were something more. Something neither of them had expected, but both of them needed. But Lexi was never one to slow down. She wanted to take things further. A few weeks later, she returned to Atlanta with a plan. She told Darnell they had to visit the place where it all started. He didn't know why, but he agreed. When they landed at the same small airport where they first met, everything felt familiar. The same smell of jet fuel, the same hum of engines, the same tarmac that had baked under the hot sun the day she'd yelled at him. Only this time, things were different. Lexi walked with him across the runway, her heels clicking softly on the pavement. A few workers watched from a distance, whispering and pointing. They all recognized her. But more importantly, they recognized him. The mechanic who had made it. Near the hangar, Darnell saw something strange. A small group of workers had gathered. Music started playing from somewhere. Confused, he turned to Lexi. "What's going on?" She smiled. "Darnell Jackson," she said, stepping in front of him. "You once saved my flight, but you saved a lot more than that." He stared at her. "You saved my faith in people. You reminded me of where I came from. You reminded me of who I am. And you showed me a kind of love I didn't even know I needed." She took a deep breath. "So now I'm asking you something I've never asked anyone before." Then she pulled a small velvet box from her pocket and knelt down on one knee. "Will you marry me?" For a few seconds, Darnell couldn't speak. The world around him blurred. He saw the old hangar, the same spot where he once stood with oil on his face, hungry, worried about rent. And now, here he was being proposed to by a woman who had changed his life. "Yes," he whispered. Then louder, "Yes, I will." She stood up smiling, and they kissed as the airport workers clapped and cheered. One of them even wiped away a tear. Later that evening, as the sun set over the same runway that had once been the symbol of Darnell's lowest point, he looked at Lexi and said, "I never thought this would be my story." She smiled back. "Always was. You just needed someone to read the first chapter." After the unforgettable proposal on the runway, life changed for Darnell Jackson in ways he had never imagined. The world he had stepped into, once so strange and intimidating, now felt like home. But even as the excitement of love and success surrounded him, Darnell knew the road ahead would not be easy. He was still a man from humble beginnings, trying to find his place in a world that moved fast, where every day brought new challenges and unexpected twists. The news of Lexi's proposal spread quickly through social media and the news outlets. People everywhere were fascinated by the story of the black mechanic who fixed a billionaire's jet and ended up engaged to her. Some called it a modern fairy tale. Others saw it as proof that hard work and honesty could still pay off in a world often ruled by wealth and privilege. But for Darnell, it was just the beginning of a new chapter, one he wanted to write carefully. The couple decided to keep things simple at first. They didn't want the pressure of a big, flashy wedding. Instead, they focused on building their future together, balancing their busy lives with quiet moments of connection. Lexi continued to lead her company with fierce determination, while Darnell poured his heart into the aviation projects that now carried his name. Their partnership became a true meeting of minds and hearts. Darnell often thought about his mother, whose sacrifices had shaped his entire life. He made sure she was comfortable, buying her a new house in a safe neighborhood with a garden full of flowers she loved. Every visit home was a reminder of how far he had come, from fixing old cars in the driveway to designing jets that could change the future of flight. Lexi, too, opened her heart more than ever before. She shared stories from her childhood, the struggles of growing up in a wealthy family with high expectations, and how she had fought to prove herself in a male-dominated industry. Darnell listened, amazed at how much strength and vulnerability she showed. Their differences, once a source of curiosity, became the foundation of a deep respect and love. As their wedding day approached, the couple invited close family and friends to a beautiful outdoor ceremony by the water. It was a warm, sunny afternoon filled with laughter, music, and heartfelt vows. Darnell wore a simple black suit, while Lexi dazzled in a white dress that shimmered like the sky at dawn. When they exchanged rings, it felt like the world paused for a moment, a quiet celebration of two people who had found each other against all odds. But life was not just about love and success. Darnell faced new challenges too. The aviation industry was competitive, and not everyone welcomed his rise. Some executives doubted his abilities. Some engineers were skeptical of his unconventional methods. There were times when Darnell felt the weight of expectations crushing him. He questioned if he was truly ready for the responsibility that came with being a co-founder of a billion-dollar company. Yet, every time doubt crept in, Lexi was there, not just as a partner, but as a fierce supporter. She reminded him of the moment they first met on the runway, how he had fixed her jet against all odds, and how that moment had changed everything. "You belong here," she would say, "and you're making a difference." Together, they launched a new project aimed at creating eco-friendly engines that could reduce carbon emissions by half. The goal was ambitious, and the pressure was immense. Investors wanted results fast, but Darnell knew innovation took time. He worked day and night, experimenting, failing, and trying again. His team admired his dedication, and slowly, their hard work began to pay off. One day, after months of testing, the prototype engine passed safety checks and efficiency standards beyond expectations. The achievement was celebrated as a breakthrough in sustainable aviation technology. Darnell's design was praised worldwide, not just for its technical brilliance, but for its potential to protect the planet. With their success growing, Lexi and Darnell became a power couple in the business world. They traveled to conferences, appeared on magazine covers, and spoke about the importance of diversity, hard work, and following your passion. Yet, despite the fame, they stayed grounded. At home, they created a space filled with love and warmth. They cooked meals together, took weekend trips to the countryside, and made time for simple pleasures: a walk in the park, a movie night, or just talking late into the night about dreams and fears. Their relationship was a constant reminder that behind every public success was a private story of trust, patience, and care. Darnell also started a foundation to help underprivileged youth learn skills in mechanics and engineering. He wanted to give back the opportunities he had been denied as a child. The foundation partnered with schools and community centers, offering scholarships, workshops, and mentorship programs. Seeing young people's faces light up when they fixed their first engine or designed a small part was the most rewarding part of Darnell's new life. As years passed, their love deepened even more. They faced hardships like any couple: disagreements, stress, the challenge of balancing personal and professional lives. But every time they found strength in each other, learned to listen, to forgive, and to grow together there. Wedding anniversary became a special time to reflect on their journey. One year, Lexi surprised Darnell with a gift-framed photo of that first day on the runway. The moment their lives changed forever. Darnell smiled, remembering how scared he had been, and how much courage it had taken to accept the chance she offered. "Do you ever think about what life would be like if you hadn't fixed that jet?" Lexi asked one evening as they watched. The sun set. He shook his head. "No, that moment was meant to be. It brought me here to you to this." Lexi took his hand and whispered, "You're my miracle." And in that simple phrase was everything they had built: hope, love, faith. In a future where anything was possible. The story of the black mechanic who fixed a billionaire's jet and became her partner in life and business inspired millions. It was proof that talent and determination could break through any barrier. But more than that, it was a story about human connection, the power of belief, kindness, and daring to dream. Darnell and Lexi knew their journey was far from over. New projects awaited. New challenges would come. But together, they were ready. They had turned a single moment on a runway into a lifetime of possibility. And that was just the beginning.